Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Cosmic Consciousness series. Today, before we get started on chapter 11, I got a message for you. Remember to love your enemies, love the people that hate you the most, because they really do define you, who you truly are. And to all the people that hate me and talk nonsense about me, I love you. I don't know what I would do without your hate, disrespect, or otherwise well disposed, blatant disregard towards me and anything that I do. Thank you. Once again, thank you so much. You don't know how much it means to me. It speaks volumes, not only of who I am or what I am capable of, but who you really are. So thank you. Thank you so much. Have fun. Welcome to the unity. Hey, welcome. And have fun with that Jesus Christ that you talk to, or whatever he is. I don't know. I don't know him. Anyways, continuing the Cosmic Consciousness series, or today we're talking about William Blake. Chapter 11. Here we go. William Blake was born in 1757, died in 1827. If Blake had cosmic consciousness, the words written above as to the vastly greater scope and variety of this than of self-consciousness will receive from his case illustration. The few short extracts from his writings below quoted almost prove that he had the cosmic sense, which he called imaginative vision, and he must have attained to it within a very few years after reaching the 30th of his age. There do not appear to be any details extant of his entrance into it, but his writings may fairly be allowed to prove the fact of possession. Part 1. W.M. Rossetti, in the prefatory memoir, to Poetical Works of William Blake, gives an admirable sketch of Blake's actual life and apparently a fair estimate of his abilities and defects. The following extracts therefrom will materially assist us in the inquiry now before us, that is, had Blake cosmic consciousness? Had he had it? Let's see. All right, in the above guy's words, what was his name? W.M. Rossetti. Okay. The difficulty of Blake's biographers subsequent to 1863, the date of Mr. Gilchrist's book, is of a different kind altogether. It is the difficulty of stating sufficiently high the extraordinary claims of Blake to admiration and reverence, without slurring over those other considerations which need to be plainly and fully set forth if we would obtain any real idea of who the man as he was, of his total unlikeness to his contemporaries, of his amazing genius and noble performances in two arts, of the height by which he transcended other men, and the incapacity which he already evinced for performing at all what others accomplish easily. He could do vastly more than they, but he could seldom do the like. By some unknown process he had soared to the top of a cloud-capped Alp, while they were crouching in the valley. But to reach a middle station on the mountain was what they could readily manage step by step, while Blake found that ordinary achievement impracticable. He could not and he would not do it. The want of will, or rather the utter alienation of will, the resolve to soar, which was natural to him, and not to walk, which was unnatural and repulsive, constituted or counted instead of an actual want of power. Wrapped in a passionate yearning, he realized, even on this earth and in his mortal body, a species of nirvana. His whole faculty, his whole personality, the very essence of his mind and mold, attained to absorption into his ideal ultimate, and to that which Dante's profound phrase designates, il ben del intelletto, or whatever. That's my name. Hey, yeah, I just couldn't understand it because of that gibberish language. William Blake's education was of the scantiest, being confined to reading and writing. Arithmetic may also be guessed at, but it is not recorded, and very probably his capacity for acquiring or retaining that item of knowledge was far below the average. Okay, so breaking it down. In the fact that Blake soared beyond and far beyond men of self-consciousness merely, but could not see or do many things that these niggas saw clearly and could do easily, we see a relationship between him and the great Illuminati. For surely the very same thing could be said of all these. In worldly matters they are all, or nearly all, as little children, while in spiritual things they are as gods. Note Balzac contracting enormous debts for want of ordinary business common sense, and laboring vainly for years to pay them while in the full exercise of enough genius to equip a regiment of Rothschilds. Bacon showered upon the human race intellectual and spiritual riches beyond all contemplation, but with every apparent advantage, position at court, that is, hereditary prestige, influential friends. He labors in vain for years for position in the self-conscious sphere, and after getting it, cannot hold it. Buddha, Jesus, Paul, Las Casas, Yeats, Bayman were wise. They saw that the things of the cosmic sense were enough, and they simply put by the things of self-consciousness, but they had tried for these, the chances are they would have failed to obtain them. Blake, too, found the world of the cosmic sense enough, and wisely did not waste any time or energy seeking for the so-called goods and riches of the self-conscious life. These men are independent of education, and most of them, like Blake himself, think it useless or worse. Blake says of it, "There is no use in education. I hold it to be wrong. It is the great sin. It is the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This was the fault of Plato. He knew of nothing but the virtues and vices and good and evil. There's nothing in all that. Everything is good in God's eyes." This reminds us what Hawley said of Bacon. He had not his knowledge from books, but from some grounds within himself. And of Whitman's, "You shall no longer feed on the specters and books." So in the preface to the Jerusalem, Blake speaks of that composition as having been dictated to him, and other expressions of his prove that he regarded it rather as a revelation of which he was the scribe than as the product of his own inventing and fashioning brain. Blake considered it the grandest poem that this world contains, adding, "I may praise it, since I dare not pretend to be any other than the secretary. The authors are in eternity." In an earlier letter dated April 25th, 1803, he had said, "I have written this poem from immediate dictation, 12 or sometimes 20 or 30 lines at a time, without premeditation and even against my own will." Blake had a mental intuition, inspiration, or revelation, whatever you call it what we will. It was as real to his spiritual eye as a material object could be to his bodily eye, and no doubt his bodily eye, the eye of a designer or painter with a great gift of invention and composition, was far more than normally ready at following the dictate of the spiritual eye, and seeing with almost an instantaneously creative and fashioning act the visual semblance of a visionary essence. His unworldliness, extreme as it was, did not degenerate into ineptitude. He apprehended the requirements of practical life, yes, was prepared to meet them in a resolute and diligent spirit from day to day, and could on occasions display a full share of sagacity. He was of lofty and independent spirit, yes, not caring to refute any odd stories that were current regarding his conduct or demeanor, that is, neither parading nor concealing his poverty, and seldom accepting any sort of aid for which he could not and did not supply a full equivalent. So breaking that down, this is the declaration of each possessor of the cosmic sense. It is not I, the visible man, who speaks, but as whoever that dude was, Jesus or whatever, "As the Father hath said unto me, so I speak." Or as Paul writes, "I will not dare to speak of anything save those which Christ wrought through me." "Loose the stop from your throat," says Whitman to the cosmic sense, and so universally, and so on and so forth. Myself, right? "Oh, I am sure," says Whitman, "they really came from thee. The urge, the ardor, the potent felt interior command, a message from the heavens. The noble truths, as Gautama said, were not among the doctrines banded down, but these arose within him, the eye to perceive them." The eye of the beholder, right? Each word of this passage is strictly true of Whitman, and allowing for difference of manners and customs in other times and countries, the paragraph could be read into the life of any one of the men discussed in this book. He knows that what he does is not inferior to the grandest antiques. Superior it cannot be, for human power cannot go beyond either what he does or what they have done. It is the gift of God, it is inspiration and vision. It must be allowed that in many instances, Blake spoke of himself with measureless and rather provoking self-applause. This is in truth one conspicuous outcome of that very simplicity of character of which I have just spoken. Egotism it is, but not worldly, not self-seeking. That he was on the whole and in the best sense happy is, considering all his trials and crosses, one of the very highest evidences in his praise. If asked, writes Mr. Palmer, whether I ever knew among the intellectual a happy man, Blake would be the only one who would immediately occur to me. Visionary and ideal aspirations of the intensest kind, the imaginative life wholly predominating over the corporeal and mundane life, and almost swallowing it up, and a childlike simplicity of personal character, free from self-interest, and ignorant or careless of any policy of self-control, though habitually guided and regulated by noble emotions and a resolute loyalty to duty. These are the main lines which we trace throughout the entire career of Blake, in his life and death, in his writings, and in his art. This it is which makes him so peculiarly lovable and admirable as a man, and invests his works, especially his poems, with so delightful a charm. We feel that he is truly of the kingdom of heaven. Above the firmament, his soul holds converse with archangels. On the earth, he is as the little child whom that fucker Jesus sat in the midst of them. The essence of Blake's faculty, the power by which he achieved his work, was intuition, baby. This holds good of his artistic productions and still more so of his poems. Intuition reigns supreme in them, and even the reader has to apprehend them intuitively, right? Or else to leave them aside altogether, right? Ample evidence exists to satisfy us that Blake had real conceptions in the metaphysical or supersensual regions of thought, conceptions which might have been termed speculations in other people, but in him rather intuitions. And the prophetic books embodied these in some sort of way that cannot be disputed. Divine I am, says Whitman, inside and out. I conned old times, says Whitman. I sat studying at the feet of the great masters. Now, if eligible, oh, that the great masters might return and study me. Happiness is one of the marks of the cosmic sense. It is too bad that these prophetic books are not published, right? It seems almost certain that they embody, beyond thick veils that is, doubtless, revelations of extraordinary value, news from the kingdom of heaven, as they say, from the better world, the world of cosmic sense. As to his religious belief, it should be understood that Blake was a Christian in a certain way and a truly fervent Christian, but it was a way of his own, exceedingly different from that of any of the other churches. For the last 40 years of his life, he had never entered a place of worship, not once. He believed with a great profundity and order of faith in God, but he believed also that men are gods, or that collective man together is God. He believed in Christ, yes, but exactly what he believed him to be is a separate question. Jesus Christ, he said, conversing with Mr. Robinson, is the only God, and so am I, and so are you, brother. In immortality, Blake seems to have believed implicitly and in some main essentials without much deviation from other people's credence. When he heard of Flaxman's death in December 7th, 1826, he observes, I cannot think of death as more than the going out of one room into another. In one of his writings, he says, the world of imagination is the world of eternity. It is the divine bosom into which we shall all go after the death of the vegetated body. Blake had in all probability read in his youth some of the mystical or Kabbalistic writers, Paracelsus, Jacob Behmen, what we talked about previously, Cornelius Agrippa, and there is a good deal in his speculations in substance and tone, and sometimes in detail, which can be traced back to the authors of this class. So Blake's religion and his attitude towards the church, towards God, towards immortality, is the characteristic attitude of the man who has attained to cosmic consciousness, as shown in each life and in all the writings of these men that we have discussed in this series. His attitude toward death is that of all the Illuminati. He does not believe in another life. He does not think he will be immortal. He has eternal life. So writes George Frederick Parsons about Balzac. Thoreau makes a similar suggestion as to Whitman, and generally it is constantly being hinted or intimated that some of these men have been reading others of them. This may, of course, sometimes happen, but speaking generally, it does not, for many of them are quite illiterate, and the studies of others, as for instance Bacon, do not lie in that direction. Comes from a completely different place, baby. Blake, Balzac, Yeats, Behmen, Whitman, Carpenter, and the rest of them has each seen for himself that the other world of which he tells us. No one can tell of it at second hand, for no one who has not seen something of it cannot conceive. Blake's death was as noble and characteristic as his life. Gilchrist gives us the following simple and touching account of it. His illness was not violent, but a gradual and gentle failure of physical powers which no wise affected the mind. The speedy end was not foreseen by his friends. It came on a Sunday, August 12, 1827, nearly 3 months before completion of his 70th year. On the day of his death, writes Smith, who had his account from the widow, he composed and uttered songs to his Maker so sweetly to the air of his Catherine, that when she stood to hear him, he, looking upon her most affectionately, said, My beloved, they are not mine, no, they are not mine. He told her they would not be parted. He should always be about her to take care of her. To the pious song followed, about 6 in the summer evening, a calm and painless withdrawal of breath, the exact moment almost unperceived by his wife, who sat by his side. A humble female neighbor, her only other companion, said afterwards, I have been at the death not of a man, but of a blessed angel. All right, part 2. It remains to quote certain declarations emanating from Blake and which seem to bear upon the point under consideration, i.e. upon the question, was Blake a case of cosmic consciousness? The world of imagination is the world of eternity. It is the divine bosom into which we shall all go after the death of the vegetated body. This world of imagination is infinite and eternal, whereas the world of generation, of vegetation, is finite and temporal. There exists in that eternal world the permanent realities of everything which we see reflected in this vegetable glass of nature. We are in a world of generation and death, and this world we must cast off it. We would be artists such as Raphael, Michelangelo, and the ancient sculptors. If we do not cast off this world, we shall be only Venetian painters who will be cast off and lost from art. The player is a liar when he says angels are happier than men because they are better. Angels are happier than men and devils because they are not always prying after good and evil in one another and eating the tree of knowledge for Satan's gratification alone. Blake's name for cosmic consciousness, that is, up here, his name for cosmic consciousness is the world of eternity, Okay. So with this paragraph, compare Whitman's, I swear I think now that everything without exception has an eternal soul. The trees have rooted in the ground, the weeds of the sea have, the animals. Okay, so the world of self-consciousness, as Balzac says, self-conscious, man judges all things by his abstractions, that is, by good and evil, virtue, crime. His formulas of right are his scales, and his justice is blind. The justice of God, i.e. of the cosmic sense, sees in that is everything. See, just like the church, just like the Christian church, that's all they do is demonize you and do all that. They created the devil. What if I told you that the Christian church, way back to the Roman Catholic ages, created the devil that you know? At one point, the devil that we were supposed to know was actually just necessary to be like there. Nobody. There is no evil. The only evil is what you create, what you make it to be. Up there in the spiritual realm, they all agree with each other. They're all the same. They're all equals. They exist. They simply exist. There is no demonification of it or demonizing of it. Like that all belongs to the church. The church are the evil. They are the prime evil. So showing the best and dividing it from the worst age vexes age. Knowing the perfect fitness and equanimity of all things, like I just discussed, manifest. While they discuss, I am silent. The last judgment is an overwhelming of bad art and science. Some people flatter themselves that there will be no last judgment. I will not flatter them. Error is created, truth is eternal. Error or creation will be burned up, and not till then truth or eternity will appear. Error that is burned up the moment men cease to behold it. I assert for myself that I do not behold outward creation, not as error at least, and that to me it is hindrance and not action. What? It will be questioned when the sun rises. Do you not see a round disk of fire somewhat like a guinea? Oh, no, I see an innumerable company of the heavenly host crying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. I question not my corporeal eye, any more than I would question a window concerning a sight. I look through it, and not with it. Beneath the figures of Adam and Eve, that is, descending the generative stream from there, is the seat of the harlot named Mystery, or self-conscious life. In the Revelations, she, Mystery, is seized by two beings, that is, life and death, each with 3 heads. They represent vegetative existence. As it is written in Revelations, they strip her naked and burn her with fire, i.e., death strips her naked, and the passions of the self-conscious life burn it as if with fire. It represents the eternal consumption of vegetable life and death, or the life and death of the merely self-conscious, with all its lusts. The wreath torches in their hands, or in the hands of life and death, represent eternal fire, which is the fire of generation or vegetation. It is an eternal consummation. Those who are blessed with imaginative vision, or cosmic consciousness in our case, see this eternal female, or mystery, the self-conscious life, and tremble at what others fear not, while they despise and laugh at what others fear. I am not ashamed, afraid, or averse to tell you what you ought to be told, that I am under the direction of some messengers from heaven daily and nightly. But the nature of such things is not, as some suppose, without trouble or care. Okay, so i.e., this is the advent of universal cosmic consciousness. Specialism, i.e. the cosmic sense, opens to man, says Balzac, his true career. The infinite dawns upon him. The audit of nature, though delayed, must be answered, and her quietus is to render thee, cosmic consciousness. Blake says his self-conscious faculties are a hindrance to him, not a help. So Balzac, baneful it, self-consciousness, exempts man from entering the path of specialism or cosmic consciousness, which leads to the infinite. So the Hindu experts teach and have always taught that suppression and effacement of many of the self-conscious faculties are necessary conditions to illumination. So Carpenter asks, knowing well the answer, does there not exist in truth an inner illumination by which we can ultimately see things as they are, beholding all creation in its true being and order? Their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched, said by Jesus of the self-conscious life, which also is the hell of Dante. So Whitman, too. I laugh at what you call dissolution. Ha 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 ha. He, my other self, nor that affable familiar ghost, cosmic sense, what have you, which nightly gulls him with intelligence. Message from the heavens whispering to me even in sleep, if you will. Part 3, summary. Okay, so A, Blake seems to have entered into cosmic consciousness when a little more than 30 years of age. B, the present editor does not know anything of the occurrence of the subjective light in his case. C, the fact of great intellectual illumination seems clear. D, his moral elevation was very marked. E, he seems to have had the sense of immortality that belongs to cosmic consciousness. And F, specific details of proof are in this case, as they must inevitably be, often be, that is, largely wanting. But a study of Blake's life, writings, he is not in a position, nor is he competent to judge Blake from his drawings, and death convinces the writer that he was a genuine and even probably a great case. So, thank you guys.